Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Releasing Trauma. I am your host, Tracy Osborne. With me today is Devin Grindrod, and we are going to be talking about, obviously, healing trauma, because that's what we do here on the show. But we're going to be talking about mind, body, and spirit. So, Devin, welcome.
Hi, Tracy. Thank you so much for having me today.
Oh, well, I'm thrilled to have you. You know, we talk about the mind so much on the show that we always forget to really talk about, well, we talk about the body too, but we don't talk about the spirit very much. So I'm very excited to get into that part of definitely of the healing aspect. But before we do, why don't you tell us a little bit about your backstory?
Okay. So, hi, everybody. My name is Devin. I started my journey to healing when I was in my early 20s and I was recovering from sexual assault. I have a history of childhood sexual assault, and then it repeated when I was older. And I just really wanted to get to the crux of it and fix that wound. So I did the standard therapy and it just wasn't cutting it for me. And I'm not, talk therapy has done wonders for my healing. It just, at that moment in time, it was not what I needed. And I was introduced to yoga at the time. So this was about 2006 when I first stepped on my mat. And I was just so blessed. The first couple of classes and studios I went to, every single teacher was just amazing. And I always left feeling better than when I went in. And what I remember being the biggest can't think of the word, the biggest helper for me in yoga was just feeling the strength of my own body, because I was being challenged to put myself in shapes and hold myself up in ways that I never even thought to put my body in or hold myself up, and just being so amazed at the strength of my own body. And I've never been a person who has like large muscles or any upper body strength. So the fact that I was doing this was really big for me. And I knew from the first class that I took, I was like, I will be teaching people how to recover from trauma through yoga. This is just what my soul's mission is here to do. And that's what I do today. So I help people to heal from trauma on the energetic and spiritual levels of our body. And the reason why yoga is such an amazing practice, and I also do energy healing. So the reason why yoga is so great is because whenever trauma happens to ourselves in whatever capacity it is, it's stored in different places in our body. Our emotions are stored in our body. And that goes, Chinese medicine has this, each meridian is associated with an emotion, things like that. So all of these ancient wisdoms know all of this information, but here in the West, this is, we're just kind of rediscovering this. And so yoga works by, just in general, not talking about trauma, to get energy moving in the body. We do that through breath work, through the asanas. It helps us to calm our mind through, again, the asana practice, meditation, finding stillness. There's just so many really great aspects of yoga. And so when you combine that with somebody who is on their road to recovery, you are starting to move the energies in the body. So those stuck, stagnant energies of trauma are then being gently moved and coerced and not coerced. We don't do any coercion in class, but they're being just moved and pressed to release in different ways. And the way that they're being released is through our own consent. Because when I teach yoga, I always tell my students, you can change the shape of your body at any time. And if you would like to place your body in a different shape than I'm suggesting, I invite you to follow the wisdom of yourself. You know yourself and what you need much more than I will. And so when you empower the students who are recovering from trauma, you are allowing them to take back control of their life. And if you can take control of your life in one area, you can take control in any other area. And so it really just puts that trauma survivor back in the driver's seat of their life. And that is what I truly, truly appreciate about yoga and what I try to bring to all of my students. And
that is so important, because as trauma survivors, we feel like we have no sense of control. We feel powerless. Mm-hmm. So being able to control even just that one aspect of our lives is huge.
Exactly. And Yeah, I mean, that did wonders for me. I don't know if I would be the person I am today if I didn't step on that mat and I didn't gain that advocacy, because learning that I could move my body whenever I wanted to after my body had just gone through what it had gone through with the assault, I was at that stage where I was like, I can do anything I want. This is my choice. I can show up to yoga if I want. I can not show up to yoga if I want. I can, and I made huge life choices in those moments. I decided to move from Washington, D.C. to San Diego, California, knowing nobody. And I did that because I was in charge of my life. And it was the best thing I've ever done.
Absolutely. For me, some of the ways that I took control were, and some of the ways that a lot of trauma survivors take control is in a more negative fashion.
Mm-hmm.
Addiction, self-harming, that kind of thing. But it gives us that, and I'm not advocating it by any stretch of the imagination, but it gives us something we can kind of control until we get to the point we're out of control again.
Yeah,
But
definitely. And I'm not perfect. I've traveled down those paths as well. So
sure. But being able to take control over our mind and our bodies and our spirits and our energy, um, that's just absolutely crucial to our healing.
yeah.
Now, I know you do energy work and that kind of thing. I want to talk about that, but I definitely want to talk about, healing on a spiritual level.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that you do through yoga, or do you have another modality that you use to heal on a spiritual level?
I mean, yoga, absolutely 100% you can do that. That's an entire, yoga means yoke, union of mind, body, and spirit. So spiritual healing can absolutely happen with yoga as well. But I use more energy healing practices like Reiki, trance healing. I'm an evidential psychic medium and Reiki master. So I have people come and get Reiki sessions, and we do such a great job, like you mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, of healing the mind and body, because research is showing us how important that is. But new research is showing, and the therapists in my life, my friends and people who've just been in the industry for a while, they're starting to edge more towards spiritual practices. I know so many therapists who are becoming shamans and integrating that in what they do, and they're actually stopping their therapy work and going towards the energy healing, because they're finding when you heal spiritually and energetically, you heal on such a deeper level, and it's a more complete healing. And so I had gone to talk therapy for years, probably 4 or 5 years. And I found a therapist when I first moved to San Diego. She did talk therapy and energy healing. And I tell you, we did more in those 8 months that I worked with her than the 5 years of talk therapy, combined.
Right.
And so that is what really kind of opened my eyes. And I wasn't woo or spiritual or anything at that time. And she would say all these things, and I'm like, sure, okay, whatever. But it's working, so I'll believe it.
Well, yeah, we're energetic beings.
Exactly. Yeah. And so it's when we leave out the spiritual and energetic healing, we're leaving out 50% of ourselves. And it's just, from my own experience, from what I've heard, from the research, from my friends in the industry, when we really embrace that spiritual and energetic healing is when we start to get the roots of the healing done. Because as you mentioned, we are spiritual beings having a human experience.
Mm-hmm.
And in our human bodies, we hold DNA from 8 generations back. And so we hold the traumas, the losses, the joys, the highs, the lows. We hold everything important that happened in those last 8 generations on both sides. So it's a lot of people that we're holding within. So we have that ancestral aspect as well. And, there's a lot of people who they'll notice that there's patterns of trauma in their family history, whether it is addiction or sexual assault or narcissism, things like that. There's these patterns, and it's because they're ingrained in us. We have these tendencies to be more open to certain experiences because of what's going on in our DNA. And then that's where epigenetics come in, where we can heal those wounds, our ancestral wounds. We can take the strengths that they have given us and leave the trauma in the past and break that connection, break that cycle within our own family and within ourselves.
Now, tell us a little bit more. What is epigenetics?
Epigenetics is, so we are born with a DNA structure, and you have whatever that looks like for everybody. So you're more or less likely to have certain experiences or illnesses, things like that. And epigenetics is when you take control of your health and you really change what's going on. So it's usually like diet, lifestyle, really big healing practices. It shifts your DNA to make you more healthier and aligned.
Okay, interesting. I'm gonna have to definitely look into that more. I've never heard of it.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting concept.
Now, where does vaginal steaming come into play when it comes to healing ourselves?
Yeah, so that also came from trauma. Well, not the practice itself, but it came into my life from trauma. So my husband and I are on a prolonged fertility journey. We're about 5 years into it, and we have had 3 losses. And I was just searching. We've been diagnosed with unexplained infertility, which to me is the biggest BS of a diagnosis. There has to be something, you know. And I just kept
Right.
thinking there has to be an answer. There needs to be. And I remember I was listening to this webinar, and this woman, Kelly Garza, was on. She was talking about vaginal steaming, and she kept saying her clients are getting pregnant and blah, 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 blah. And, you know, all this stuff about vaginal steaming. And I was just so enamored by it that by the end of her talk, I was signed up and I've taken her full program now. And vaginal steaming helps to align your menstrual cycle. So what we have learned in the Western culture is that there is a normal range of a menstrual cycle, but nobody's ever been taught what a healthy menstrual cycle looks like. And while I was well within normal, I was far from healthy. And, you know, I found that my cycle is one of the reasons why we are not getting pregnant. And I have a lot of stagnation. And, you know, there's 3 main imbalances that somebody who's having trouble conceiving has. And I have all 3 very strongly. But nobody ever asked me those questions. You know, I had been to reproductive endocrinologists, I had been to OBGYNs, the whole scan or the whole spectrum. And nobody ever asked me these questions about what my menstrual cycle looked like. It was always just like, okay, that's normal, that's fine. And yeah, so just learning about what a healthy menstrual cycle is first and foremost. And for those who don't know, it's 28 to 30 days where you have 4 days of fresh red blood and absolutely no period symptoms. And I know that sounds like a unicorn, but it's possible. And when you practice vaginal steaming, so there's different protocols for different imbalances and different herbs that you would use. So it's hard to exactly say what a specific protocol would be. Yeah. So just working with somebody who is a professional who's had training in the field, and they can help you align your menstrual cycle, give you the right herbs that you need, the right protocols, and there's mild lifestyle changes that go along with it. So for instance, if you have stagnation, which there was a study done on like 20,000 women, and I think 95% of them had some stagnation. And that's usually, you can see if you get bloating, if you have cramps, or if your blood airs on the side of brown. You have some stagnation. And so lifestyle changes for that would be to avoid fatty and fried food during right up to and during your bleeding days. And so it's just about creating manageable changes that you have control over. And what's so great about it is that you work with your practitioner, you get your healthy cycle, and then you have the tools for the rest of your life to do this for yourself. And not only that, but to teach your kids.
So I mean, that's awesome because it's getting to know your body on a very intimate level.
Yeah.
And for those of us who have experienced sexual trauma, that's not an easy thing for us to do.
No, especially that area, because it holds so much. And then there's also the energetic practice of it, because you're using herbs, you're using your plant medicine. When I say plant medicine, I don't mean like ayahuasca. There's no drugs involved in this. So I know people it's a broad term, but you're using herbs to heal yourself. And the herbs with the water and the steam. We go into, the healing properties of steam. We have that in facials. There's saunas. We use it for our clothes. There's lots of uses for steam in the world. But it really just helps to take out what no longer serves us, whether that be energy, whether that be actual stagnation or what have you. And I remember I did the steam one night, and I just felt like I needed to crouch down and release. Like I was crouching down on the floor, and I just felt this huge energetic release from my body. And like, I swear to you, I lost like 15 pounds in that release. It just was this huge wave of just letting go. And it was so amazing to know that not only I did this for myself, but I have, again, control over that, because I can do that again. I can let go. I can release. I know what I did to get to that state, and I can do that again.
Wow. That's awesome. When I first heard about vaginal steaming, my first thought was, who in their right mind would put steam down there? Hello.
Yeah.
But after listening to you talk about it, now it makes me want to definitely go try it, because my periods are never, ever regular. Never have been. And I definitely have at least stagnation. I get the cramps, I get the bloating, I get the eating everything in the house before the week before, and all of that good stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely going to have to look into trying that.
It sounds crazy, but looking into the history of it, which the woman I mentioned earlier, Kelly Garza, she is all about, I think she has a degree in international relations or master's or something. And so she did all of this research on the history of it and found in, I think, almost 80 countries around the world it was found in. So it's like Thailand, Korea, India, countries in Africa, all over Europe, and all over the globe, women were doing this. And the real disconnect happened in the 1800s when we switched over to when allopathic medicine was born. And women were no longer allowed to be present at birth and practice medicine. And that is when we lost vaginal steaming. So we didn't lose it and didn't stop doing it because it was harmful and ineffective. We stopped doing it because there was a change in paradigm.
Gotcha. And I love that all of that more natural medicine is coming back to us and making its way over to us in the Western world.
Mm-hmm.
The last thing we need as trauma survivors is to put more toxins in our body with medicine.
Yeah.
So,
and oh boy, do I have a load of medical trauma too.
I bet. Yeah. Well, Devin, how can we find you online?
So I'm most active on Instagram, and my handle there is spiritually balanced. And if you're interested in visiting my website, that is spirituallybalanced.com.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been really enlightening for me.
Thank you so much, Tracy.
And listeners, you know what I'm going to say. All of Devin's information is going to be down in the show notes. If you're listening from our partner stations, head over to releasingtraumapodcast.com, pull up Devin's show, and all her contact information will be right there for you to easily find her. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you on the next show.